knocks the kid out. He wakes up
See?
tight.
I told you, man. I wouldn't even do it, man. She trying to get rid of him.
And Keiichi catches the man and brutally beats him to death. Keiichi
He should not have did that, man. Come on, man.
Let's get it. Subscribe to the channel. Y'all settle down. Let me do this. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I go by the name of GODGOTHAM Game, and welcome back to the channel. The second channel.
All right, y'all, look at the thumbnail. Y'all see the title, and today we got how to beat anime, and this is how to beat the villain of, you know, the D word, and I can't pronounce that. Higurashi, Higurashi. I hope I said it right. I never saw the anime, bro, right here, so you already know. I like when they be, like I said, I like when they be explaining how to, you know, how to beat these things, because, you know, I'm always fascinated about these type things, so you already know. Link up in the description below. Like, comment, and subscribe. We got 1K, and it keep going up. Let's keep it going up, but you already know my slogan,
kid in a village full of cult fanatic killers.
Oh,
What would you
man.
do? This town is hiding a terrifying secret, and you'll have to die multiple times if you want to survive. I'm here to break down the mistakes,
It's like ReZero,
what you
right?
should do, and how to beat the village of death in Higurashi. This boy is
Higurashi.
about to lose his.
They're like ReZero, like if he get defeated, he go back in, you know what I'm saying? Like,
mind. The new kid Keiichi here has just moved to a new school in the middle of nowhere. He meets
the
up
middle
with
of
his
nowhere?
new friend Rena, and they head off to school, passing by this green-haired girl Mion, who tags along. In class, Rena suggests that they show the new kid around their town, and Keiichi agrees. But he doesn't realize this innocent tour is going to change his life forever. The next day, Keiichi thanks them for introducing him to their town. Mion leaves, and the new kid admits that he doesn't want the day to be over. Rena decides to take him to a garbage dump and runs off to go find the cardboard cutout of Colonel Sanders. I wish I was kidding. Later, Keiichi lies down and suddenly gets spooked by a man wearing glasses and taking photos. The photographer apologizes and tells him he was just trying to capture a picture of birds. But this guy is hiding a disturbing secret. The photographer asks him why is his friend in the dumpster looking around for junk. Keiichi jokes and says his friend is just looking for dead corpses and body parts. The photographer's face drops at those words and tells him that that shit isn't something to joke around with, and mentions that there was a horrible crime committed in this area, and then he walks off like nothing happened. The next morning, Keiichi confronts Mion and asks about what he heard. She explains that the government was going to build a dam and force everyone out of their home, but the villagers fought back and eventually won and stopped them. Keiichi tries to question if anything violent happened because of that incident, but Mion here tells him nothing. This girl is hiding something and is about to get someone killed. Later, Keiichi finds Rena at the garbage dump again and sees her looking for more valuables.
I can't trust the one with the green hair. No, she sus right now. She's sus to me right now. I don't care.
And still trying to
That's a
free the
robot?
colonel. Keiichi decides to help her out, but just then he finds a newspaper detailing the horrifying dam incident that took place here. He reads that someone was killed here and they were hacked to death with pickaxes and hatchets, and learns that the head was cut off and the body was ripped apart into 6 pieces.
But with all this Japanese murder going on, Keiichi didn't have that one thing he could have used to better source his information privately. And that's with private internet access, because murder is messy and we're all about that. But in order to be a cold-blooded killer, we gotta get cold. Literally. Private internet access is the most transparent VPN provider that won't store none of the weird questions you weaves Google about origami, Maria Ozawa, and ramen noodles. And these guys will keep Japan's government and the world out of your business. When you're not trying to be a colder heartthrob like Edward Cullen, you can chill out and watch stuff like Higurashi and other batshit crazy animes with the click of a button, switching your countries to wherever it's available, like Netflix Japan. But you know all this stuff, what you don't know is that these guys have a no-logs policy that have been proven multiple times in court. They don't keep your stuff, and the courts have actually proven it. These VPNs
Ooh.
is more customizable
Love
than
his
Dom's
face turning
split
red.
personality, going from Clark Kent to Hannibal Lecter over his watch collections in a matter of seconds. And you can too with your VPN experience and all your cheeky browsing needs. It works with all major streaming services, blocks
Istanbul.
ads, is 100% open source and available to the public. 84 countries and next-gen servers, and you can connect up to 10 devices per subscription. Use our link and you'll grab an 82% discount on private internet access. That's $2.11 a month,
Them
and you'll get
glasses
3 extra
fall.
months completely free. So get your crypto, credit, and gift cards to support your boys. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring this video. Now back to the show.
Okay, right now, while everything seems hunky-dory on the surface, there's some signs, some obvious and some not,
sus.
that makes me think that something sinister is actually going on here. And everything that seems so suspicious around here starts with the name of this town itself. The character of Hinamizawa means swamp in Japanese, which most likely preserves this town's connection to what this
And it's the middle of nowhere too, so come on, man.
village was originally called the Abyss of Demons. That right there, for starters, should have had Keiichi's parents here at least a little bit nervous that the town with the scary past name has, surprise, surprise, a scary ass past. And the name Hinamizawa, essentially meaning swamp, means that this town's structure is likely above or surrounded by a low-lying area that is subject to flooding and has an unstable base at its core, which means that the government coming along and choosing this spot to build a dam likely makes sense a little bit based on this town's geographical location. Now it's likely that the government came in and offered this town a whole lot of money to build this dam, and we all know that the government coming in to offer help to smaller cities or towns is nothing new. And the same thing happened in Michigan, where 45 towns declined getting any federal stimulus money to help them out due to the 2020 events. However, when these townsfolk were interviewed as to why they essentially said no to free money, they mentioned that nothing is ever free, and that there would be too many things to comply with in order to get that money. So just like making a deal with the devil, the government coming
Never
in
signed a
to
contract.
help this town would likely have come with a huge downside for the town of Hinamizawa. And from the looks of things, this town relies on agriculture and other sorts of things from the land that makes sense for them to be dependent on this location. And think about it this way: if the government was coming in and trying to take your livelihood away from you, would you really do nothing and just let them take it from you?
Man,
And with
heck
Keiichi
no.
being in this town for less than a month means
We fine.
that we really have no idea what these people are capable of, which means we need to keep our distance and get some more information about this place, starting with outsiders and or people that have little connection to this place, are passing through, or are past their prime. This photographer guy
Oh,
is
yeah.
one such individual that we could ask for more answers
I definitely go to the old ladies. I mean, the elder people, for know the backgrounds and stuff about this no name swamp area.
from, but he's clearly got some glasses guy energy. From the way he was pulling off
Glasses
those
guy
shades,
energy.
taking those pictures, seems suspicious as hell. But if he turns out to be a dud, our next best bet is, like I said, questioning people past their prime.
Yeah, 'cause they know
such as
stuff.
the elderly. Because with old folks especially, it's safe to assume that most will be over whatever is going on in this town, and essentially have no dog in this race, and simply not give a shit, since they're practically on death's bed anyways. Cause remember, really, really old people, just like in real life, tend not to give a crap about nothing, which makes them our greatest source of information. That night, Keiichi takes part in the annual cotton drifting festival. Walking around, he finds the photographer and what looks to be his girlfriend relaxing near the river. He decides to run down and ask about the town's history, and the photographer explains that there were plans 8 years ago to build the dam, and had it been built, this village and all the others surrounding it were going to flood and go underwater. But Hinamizawa stopped the construction from happening, and that the cut-up body incident happened 4 years ago, right on the day of the Cotton Festival. The couple explains in detail the gruesome murders that occur every year, and that they wouldn't be surprised if another one was coming very soon. The next day, this private investigator Oishi approaches Keiichi at school, asking to speak with him in private. He shows the kid a picture of the photographer and the girl he was with, revealing that the man was killed late last night, and that the cause of death was human fingers clawing at his throat and hitting a major artery. He tells Keiichi to keep this a secret, since the villagers will believe it to be a curse, taking vengeance on the photographer for taking insensitive pictures of the Cotton Festival. After school, he approaches Rena to ask if she's keeping any secrets. The girl flips
I feel like it's that one with the green house. She the sus.
flips it back on him and reveals that she saw him speaking with the investigator, suddenly making him nervous, and he awkwardly backs off. Later that night, the investigator calls the kid to tell him more about the town. He informs Keiichi that out of the 6 murders, 1 is still unsolved. He mentions that they're looking for a kid called Satoshi, and Keiichi realizes that he found his name tag in school a few days back, and also on the back of some play cards with his friends. The teacher at the school told him that the kid had transferred, but Keiichi finds out that he's actually dead. That's when Keiichi's dad knocks on the door. The kid opens up to find his dad with 2 cups of tea, 1 for him and 1 for Rena, mentioning that Rena had just come by. Shocked, Keiichi slams the door shut on his dad and realizes that the girl was listening in on his entire conversation. Later, shell-shocked Keiichi wakes up and goes to the local hospital. The doctor tells him that he only has a cold and gives him a shot for it. On his way back from the local hospital, Oishi bumps into Keiichi and invites him to lunch. The man reveals that he's been searching around the town and realizes that all the deaths are connected to his friend group. He mentions that Rena had a psychotic incident in the past few weeks and is currently being treated for her severe mental problems. You think this is bad? Oh, it gets so much worse. The investigator tells Keiichi that Rena's medical records mention a terrifying fact. She mutters the word Oyashiro in her sleep constantly and says that a cursed man stands over her bed every night, shocking Keiichi to the bone. That night, Rena and Mion surprise Keiichi, giving him some baked goods, and Rena says that one of them she made, and that he'll have to figure out who made which goodie. And that's when they confront him about meeting with the investigator. He denies any involvement, but the girls don't believe a single word out of his mouth. Scared, Keiichi walks carefully back into his house and checks out the goodies that he was gifted. He takes a single bite and suddenly notices a needle inside, freaking him the hell out and realizing that
they trying to get rid of him.
one of these girls wants him dead. Okay, this is crazy. Because, for example, finding the lunch lady's hair in my meal is one thing, however disgusting that is, but a pin? That's a Japanese lawsuit waiting to happen. And while it is indeed dangerous to swallow such an object that can cause visceral tearing or abscesses within days of ingestion, this little move makes me think that this was just a pinprick of a warning. Just like the horse's head on top of the bed thing in the movie The Godfather.
Yeah, I got a weird one that happened. You know what I'm saying? Like happened. You know, I don't even want to talk about it.
This also is a warning, and one that I think means that these 2 girls want us to back off from snooping into this town's past. And this is the second
they're like a warning. They're pretty much like a warning. They're pretty much warning you now.
time these girls have asked us about our meeting with the investigator, who they don't know is a cop, which means it's obvious that they are keeping tabs on us, and is likely the same reason why they chose to pay us a visit tonight, the only night where our parents weren't at home. Coincidence? I think not. Now, we can't do anything just yet, because we don't know the full story. But the one thing we do have is the name of Rena's ghost that the investigator mentioned, called Oyashiro. Looking into this word, what it means, and its origins will give us some direct insight into Rena's sick and twisted mind. Because ooky spooky ghosts and subliminal meanings aside, we need to treat Rena's ghost as sort of a reflection of her inner psyche, at least for now. Renowned psychologist Sigmund Freud once considered dreaming as an expression of repressed conflicts or desires, whereas Carl Jung explained the concept of dreams as sort of shaped energy composed of emotions or thoughts that are released by the deep subconscious. This means that if we can figure out the meaning,
Hang on, I used to draw my my little animes. I used to draw my anime eyes just like this, bro. Like I used to draw them just like this with all that. Then the big eye. I used to love drawing that. Let me just back to the thing
of what she mutters in her sleep, particularly the word Oyashiro, then we'll better understand her mind and who it is that we are really dealing with. Because it is likely we won't be safe until these girls are locked behind bars, but that will never happen unless we can understand them, and better yet, outsmart them at their own game. By understanding their play, the rules, and having them get caught red-handed at whatever sadistic shit they've just pulled us into. The next day, Keiichi walks to school and nearly gets hit by an oncoming driver in a white van. The driver flees the scene, class. The girls propose they play a game for their school club, but the kid isn't interested. He continues to act weird throughout the entire day, swinging a metal bat that he found lying around during his free time. Keiichi freaks out on all of his classmates, and Rena confronts Keiichi after class, questioning him what's wrong with him. The boy is furious, telling the girl to
Someone trying to get rid of him, and then other girls put a needle in his donut.
piss off and walk in front of him so he can see her. Rena mentions that he's doing everything that Satoshi did before he disappeared, and it seems like Keiichi here might just end up with the same fate. Later back at home, he gets a call from his parents saying that they had left the house at noon for Tokyo due to work reasons, leaving Keiichi in his house all alone. Later in the night, he gets a call from the investigator again, and Keiichi tells him about the needle that he found inside a baked goodie. But when the investigator asks him to find it, he realizes that it's gone. His parents must have tossed away the garbage before they left. Suddenly, he hears a knock on the door. It's Rena outside, and it all starts out just fine. She asks him how he's doing, is he okay, does he need food? She made some. She'll give it to him if he just lets her in. Keiichi said,
Yo, they all in on him, bro. They trying to take him out ASAP quick.
No, his parents are making food in the kitchen, and that's when it all changes. Rena suddenly starts pulling at the chain, asking Keiichi to let her in, causing him to freak out, slamming the door on her fingers, putting all of his weight on the door. And Rena screams in pain until she lets go. Shell-shocked Keiichi walks back into his room and calls the investigator to find out more information. He mentions that Rena was involved in the murder of 3 students who were brutally killed with a bat, the same bat that was owned by a certain Satoshi. However, no one pressed charges, and the case was dropped. The next day at school, Mion walks over to Keiichi, and he confronts her about the chopped-up corpse in the dam. He accuses her of lying, and reveals that he knows they're all out to kill him. After school, he notices Rena walking home and quickly hides. That's when he turns around to see the
Oh my god, I ain't knew what that was.
crazy girl holding a hatchet. She laughs in his face, and Keiichi here freaks out, confronting the girl about the curse. But she doesn't see anything wrong with what's going on in the town. The girl gets closer, pushing her hatchet against his neck. Keiichi pushes her away and runs off into the forest before being seen by 2 security guards. They catch up to him, and one of them knocks the kid out. He wakes up with Rena by his side, and she says that a doctor is on his way. And that's when Mion walks in, and the girl laughs creepily in his face. They tell Keiichi that since he forgot to do his homework, he must be punished. Suddenly, Mion pulls out a needle, and the new kid freaks out. Things go sideways, and Keiichi has no choice but to brutally murder the crazy girls. But later, the police arrive on the scene to find out that Keiichi is now dead. Jeez, wow. Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. As predicted, Keiichi is now dead, and if I'm the detective, I would seriously consider retiring. This detective failed to do his job and assess the situation before it was too late, and why in the world would he share all of this highly sensitive information with a student? In any case, according to the Waseda Bulletin of Comparative Law, Volume 28, Article 222, a person who intimidates another through a threat to another person's life, body, freedom, reputation, or property shall be imprisoned or fined 300,000 yen. And this detective got direct confirmation of what Rena and green-haired girl had done to Keiichi with the pin in his food, which in the eyes of the law could have been seen as a threat. And to top it off, the cop already told Keiichi that Rena had a history of psychotic aggression and problems in the past. And while all of this might seem like just correlating factors based on sheer coincidence, according to the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the threat from a child should be taken seriously when the child in question has had a violent or aggressive behaviors displayed and past patterns of threats. This means that this cop already knew and had the authority to call in for outside psychiatric help on those 2 girls, since he had proof that they were batshit crazy. He should
Yo, that detective kind of weak, man.
have done this before Keiichi died in the first place in that telephone booth, because sitting around and eating Japanese donuts should have been the last thing that he should have done. Now this kid is dead. Trying to get answers out of the residents here may prove to be pretty much impossible, and such villages like these usually prioritize community above the law. The next day, Keiichi Keiichi wakes up as if nothing happened, and he goes to meet with the girls and they attend a normal school day as if last night's events never happened. Later, he goes to a cafe and runs into Mion's twin sister, Shion. Keiichi here doesn't believe it, thinking that it's Mion in disguise. He arrives back home and suddenly Shion shows up out of nowhere, and she gives him some food and tells the kid that Mion wanted to make sure that he had something to eat. At school, the kids mention that the annual cotton drifting festival is about to take place. The same events are happening all over again, and Keiichi doesn't realize what's going on. He walks back home as usual and accidentally trips over a set of motorbikes. These delinquents find him and hold
Hey, I like that hairstyle. Remember that JoJo.
the kid up. But Shion here scolds them for causing trouble outside of her cafe, and suddenly all of the villagers around them corner the kids and they run off, leaving Keiichi freaked out by what just happened. The next day, the festival is about to begin and the villagers meet up to discuss their roles for the night. Oishi here shows up and tells them that he'll be working security. Later in the day, Keiichi meets up with his somehow not dead friends and bumps into a very much alive photographer guy and Blondie all over again, and they decide to fill him in about what this
Told you this some ReZero type stuff.
festival is all about. Photographer guy and Blondie explain to him that the people who were involved with the dam have been dying every year, and it happens on the night of the annual cotton drifting festival. Shion mentions that one person dies by the curse and another disappears as a sacrifice, meaning two people will cease to exist come tomorrow. At the start of the festival, Shion pulls him away from the celebrations and takes him into the forest. She points to photographer guy and Blondie who are doing something they shouldn't. They're found out, and Shion confronts them about what they're doing here. The photographer admits that they're raiding the storage room, which is a sacred place to the town and a place that is forbidden to outsiders. Blondie tells them to not mention that they were in this storage room or else she might be killed. She shows them the rest of the room and reveals that the cotton drifting festival has a dark and violent history. They look around and find torture devices that were used hundreds of years ago in the town, but Blondie mentions that there's a possibility the town is still practicing these violent acts to this very day. That's when photographer interrupts them all to let them know that everyone is now down by the river. Shion tells the new kid not to mention tonight's events or they might just become a victim of the curse. She tells him to meet up at the library the next day in order to discuss something important. Keiichi arrives at the library and finds Shion sitting down, but Oishi shows up and spots them and walks over. Shion then quickly mentions that she has to work and leaves. Oishi tells the kid that Mion comes from a Yakuza family that controls the town's operations, and that's when he asks if Keiichi met photographer and Blondie and Shion last night, but he gets interrupted by his assistant and wishes the kid farewell. That night, Shion calls him to give him some terrifying news. Photographer guy and Blondie last night were both killed in brutal ways, and she thinks that the Oyashiro's curse is about to kill them too for entering the storage room. Freaking out, Keiichi blames the entire situation on the girl but gets no response. Okay, this is more strange and weird than Dom's obsession with sweet chili and fries. This feels like a twisted version of Groundhog Day. We now have a not dead Keiichi who royally screwed up. He should have known better than to go inside a spooky temple inside a town that is already a legend for people disappearing or getting killed mysteriously. And here's the thing, this curse reminds me of another more famous curse which you might know of, the curse of King Tutankhamun, an Egyptian pharaoh from the old world whose tomb was discovered in 1922, and the discovery of his tomb supposedly sparked the deaths of many people involved with the search, or so the tale went, when in reality, all the people who were involved with the excavation of the tomb died by sheer coincidences, whether they were already in bad health before they opened the tomb or they got infected by a mosquito bite gone wrong. The list goes on and is among many other reasons that debunk the so-called curse. This is
Oh yeah, I heard about that right now. I thought it was like when they had opening. That's what I thought. Like when they opened it, they all been, you know, whatever.
why, supernatural stuff aside, I think if regular deaths like these happen often in this town, then I'm willing to bet a few Monopoly dollars that it is likely that somebody is keeping watch at places like these temples, marking down who goes in and who disrespects what, and then take revenge upon said person. And recently, the deceased photographer guy who's now alive somehow may have been right, because all of these deaths happening with such precision screams human intervention. And now that Shion told us that the curse means that something will try and make 2 more people disappear, this is why we now have to final destination this bitch and seek safe shelter as an insurance policy, at least for the next few days. And Ueshi mentioned that Mion is next in line to inherit not just the Yakuza side of things, drugs. She's also going to inherit control over the entire family, which means her sister is playing second fiddle. And this means that we should
She probably trying to get rid of him.
get on good terms with Shion. This will be our best bet in ensuring that we can start hanging out with her more often, and perhaps even stay over at her house for round-the-clock protection. Because their creepiness aside and the fact that it's a Yakuza family, it's safer to get closer to the devil we know than the devil we don't. The next day, Keiichi finds Rika fallen down on the ground. He asks her if she's alright, but she asks him if he did anything bad at the festival last night. Keiichi freezes up and says nothing, and abruptly Rika leaves. She knows something about Keiichi, and it's going to end badly. Later that night, Keiichi gets a call from Shion, and he asks for her forgiveness for the argument they had last night. They make up and then talk about the village head leaving, and Shion blames herself for the disappearance. She told him about the curse, and he died soon after. That's when Keiichi realizes something. He told Rika about the curse also, and he rushes over to meet up with Rena and Mion to find out what's going on with their friend. They arrive at the little girl's house and find it locked. Keiichi climbs up a ladder to get in, but Mion begins to violently shake it, shouting out psychotic nonsense. They break down the doors and find no one's home. Outside, Keiichi breaks down, knowing that his friend is dead because of him. The next day, Rena tells Keiichi that she checked the little girl's kitchen and found food items still cooking. And that's when they bump into the investigator, Oishi, who takes him into his car for a private talk. He tells the kid that there's been multiple disappearances, including photographer guy, Blondie, and now Rika. Oishi mentions that he's not a suspect yet, but he knows about them busting into the shrine. However, the people who went inside that room are now beginning to die, and he suspects that something inside that room wants to have them silenced. Suddenly, Oishi reveals that Shion has also gone missing. That night, he receives a call from the missing girl. He questions her about the village chief and his frequent hospital visits, but the girl denies knowing where the hospital is. And that's when it hits him. Keiichi connects the dots and questions her about meeting the village chief. Furious, he calls the girl out on the phone and demands to know who's actually calling him. All he hears is laughter on the phone and gets no real reply. The next day, Rena arrives at his house and scolds him for being reckless. Keiichi decides to apologize again and heads to Mion's house. He admits to her that they broke into the storage room and apologizes for everything he's done. However, they mention that Rika came to her house before disappearing. When she arrived, Mion hid the little girl. Suddenly, she confesses and decides to explain what's going on. Mion reveals that the town used to have a different name, where her family were wizards who carried a demon bloodline. The old villagers hated her family with a passion. She was assigned as a demon and suggests that she might be responsible for the killings. Rena insists that she hands herself over, telling them that the investigator Oishi is outside. Giving up, Mion asks Rena if she can have Keiichi for a private talk. She takes him outside and reveals that her sister Shion is still alive. The girl brings him into a secret room
I wasn't interested. She probably gonna try to get rid of me too, man. No.
full of old family heirlooms and torture devices,
Oh,
leading
my.
him through an underground prison. Suddenly, he finds Shion locked up, and she freaks out at the sight of her sister behind him. That's when Mion grabs a rock and knocks the kid out. He wakes up
See?
tied
I told you, man. I wouldn't even do it, man. She trying to get rid of him.
to a table and begs her to stop, questioning whether it's Mion or the demon in control. The demon blames him for everything, blaming that he woke her up, all because Keiichi gave Rena the doll instead of her. The demon says she's going to stab multiple nails in between the joints of his fingers in
Oh
order
my
to watch
God.
him suffer and have Shion hear his screams. Keiichi calmly responds and urges her to do what's right, as long as she forgives Shion and that the demon leave Mion's body forever. The demon declines the kid's offer, tasing his neck. Later, he's taken out on a stretcher, and the investigator loses sight of the evil twin sister. That night, Keiichi notices Mion waiting outside of his house, and he walks outside, and the girl tells him that she can't stay in town any longer, and suddenly brutally stabs Keiichi in the stomach. My gosh, this anime is more nuts than a fish without flippers. It's basically like as if the movie Inception and the movie Shutter Island had an anime baby, which gave us Higurashi. Keiichi here, for starters, is dumber than that raccoon thing trying to get his nut in Ice Age. I'm surprised he managed to figure this much out this time around. Following Mion down into a basement right after she confessed to a huge crime is a big no-no. And why the frick nuts did he have his back to her? He was so naive and ill-prepared, it was disgusting. He
That's what I said. You should not even went. No, bro. Like, why would you, man?
Should have seen this coming from a mile away. It's already mentioned that this town is steeped in rituals.
And it
Everything
kind
from
of
the
swamp,
temples,
bro.
cotton drifting rituals, to even the yearly murders. Everything that happens in this shady town is happening to satisfy someone. You ever heard the term to appease the gods? This is exactly that. Except here, they're appeasing demons. Mion mentioning that her family was a part of a demon bloodline should have been Keiichi's first clue that this chick was off her rocker. She even mentions that she has a demon inside of her. And even if we didn't take her seriously, according to Westminster Seminary of California, one of the first signs a pastor must look out for to deem whether a person is possessed is if they have any indicators that the person dabbles in the occult, or if they spend great amount of time engaged in immorality of any sort. Basically, does this person spend their time doing any sort of weird or messed up shit that could invite a demon into their lives? Because this type of stuff can be an indicator that demon possession is in fact happening, or this could just indicate that this person is batshit crazy. But either way, Keiichi should have noticed this at the time when Mion mentioned all of this and should have gotten the hell out of Dodge before it was too late. Days later, the investigator Oishi informs him of the events that have happened since he's been out. Shion was found dead and her sister has disappeared. He also tells him that they found all of the victims just like Keiichi said in the well. But then he reveals something truly shocking. He says that he did in fact find Mion's body inside that well. And he asks him, was he really stabbed by Mion? Shortly thereafter, Oishi decides to leave the kid alone and walks away, when suddenly a bloodied Mion reappears and brutally murders him. Keiichi wakes up the next day as if nothing happened. His mom tells Keiichi that she's going to Tokyo for a few days and he'll have to cook for himself. He tries his best, but the kid messes up real bad and causes a fire. The little girls rush in and stop him from burning the house down, cooking him dinner instead. They share the food and the blonde girl mentions that her brother is the ex-student Satoshi. The next day, Keiichi rushes into school thinking that a fight is about to break out. He interrupts a baseball team and realizes that he's an idiot.
Bro, I used to draw my stuff just like this, man. Oh my god. Come on. I used to love drawing stuff like this with the big eyes and all that. Oh my god.
After the game, he talks with the coach, who openly admits that he's in love with Sakuro, who is very much so underage. He reveals that her parents died in an accident, and she's been living with Rika ever since. Later, he talks with Shion, who happens to be the manager of the baseball team, and he mentions Satoshi in his conversation. The girl freezes up and tells him to not say he transferred out of school. Walking home, he confronts the girls about the Satoshi situation, and they decide to confess what really happened, saying that he disappeared one day and forced the whole town to go looking for him. However, a witness saw a man resembling Satoshi outside of town, which means he might still be alive. Rena butts in and tells Keiichi that he was taken away by the curse. She freaks out and Mion is forced to get physical in order to calm her down. Rena walks off and Mion explains that Satoshi is a sensitive subject for the villagers. The kid's parents were supporters of the dam, which goes against the rest of the town, and that his parents died on the day of the cotton picking festival. Okay, this is some super serious shit, because now we know we have some valuable information, in that not everyone in this village wanted to stop the dam from being built, but rather, just like Mion said, there were a handful of villagers who supported the movement of the dam being built. And coincidence or not, we can't argue that it's damn convenient that a lot of the murders that have taken place have been done on the supporters of the dam, and that all of these deaths have been blamed on nothing but deeply rooted superstitions. Which, eerily enough, reminds me of the witch hunts of India, which according to the Scientific American, more than 2,500 Indians have been chased, tortured, and killed in such witch hunts between 2000 and 2016, such as one that happened in India in 2014. 2 women were targeted and attacked, being labeled as witches after 2 men died in a village. However, there was no connection to the 2 women and to the victims, other than pure hearsay. Unfortunately, these types of attacks are not uncommon, and is often used to oust women from valuable land that they own. Needless to say that just like these accusations based on convenient explanations that hide the real truth, the villagers in this town have gotten too complacent and accepting of blaming everything on Oyashiro's curse, and are using it as an scapegoat. If I was Keiichi, I'd start developing a list, Final Destination style, of who all supported the damn movement and begin damn investigating into those damn people. I would even find
before they probably get defeated or something.
Find out, other than the money, if there was any other incentives to stop certain people from voting for the dam to be built. Because other than a majority of votes, there is—
I think the people that are against it, they the one gonna go doing all the taking them out.
There's gotta be someone here, or someones, whose vote for the dam mattered more than the rest. And I would work on finding out who would have the biggest motive to stop these people from voting. Because Kirschmers, there is something going on here that no one else is seeing. The next day, the investigator appears and introduces himself to Keiichi. He asks the kid to bring Satoko outside, but the toddlers tell him that she's absent. Keiichi gets angry at the man for asking so many questions, but that's when the local doctor and coach of the baseball team appears and tells him that they have the right to remain silent. At his office, he mentions that the investigator is always looking for Satoko. He doesn't
I ain't gonna lie, I do be thinking it could be the investigator behind some of this stuff, but I'm not gonna say that.
know why, but explains that the girl has had a traumatic
Or could it be the doctor?
childhood. Later, Keiichi bumps into the doctor and little blondie Satoko at her uncle's house. The man berates her for being useless, and the little girl takes all of it without any response. Enraged, Keiichi demands what just happened, but little Satoko stops him, and he sees the bruises all over her body. In the doctor's car, he explains that the girl thinks of her harassment as a test, thinking that her brother will come back if she can take enough punishment. Keiichi rejects the idea and tells the doctor that he'll inform the authorities of what's going on. The next day, Keiichi bumps into a very not dead photographer who introduces himself as a visitor to the town all over again. He asks for directions to the shrine, and the kid decides to help him out and lead the way. They arrive to find the calm blondie girl waiting around, mentioning that she's seen Keiichi before. The photographer interrupts and tells them that the Cotton Drifting Festival is happening tomorrow and the town curse will take another life. The blonde girl suggests that the curse might be fake and doesn't make a big deal of it. Keiichi decides to visit Mion and asks for a very special request. As the heir of the family, he wants her to make the curse target Satoko's uncle for this year's festival. Annoyed, the girl tells Keiichi that they can't just change the curse's target and wouldn't do it even if it was possible. At school, they find Satoko sitting in the classroom. She tells them that a social worker was bothering her and uncle. The group shares lunch together, and Keiichi here pats the girl on the head to make her feel better. And suddenly she has a flashback of her own brother and begins freaking out. She vomits into her own hands, and she begins furiously apologizing, and no one realizes what's going on. At the clinic, the nurse tells her that she'll be okay. However, Keiichi here makes a vow to kill her uncle after what he's seen today. He rushes to the school and grabs Satoshi's bat from the storage room. The kid rushes over to the forest and digs a hole in the ground to hide his future victim. He calls Mion up in the middle of the night to ask for a favor. He wants her to take Satoko away from her uncle so he can do the deed unhindered. The night of the festival, Keiichi calls up the little girl's dirtbag uncle and tells him that she's been put into protective custody, and he tells the uncle to come right away. But the uncle resists at first, saying that he just took a bath. Keiichi demands that he comes right away anyways, and convinces him to head over to the police department. Now, with his plan in motion, Keiichi waits for Hojo Satoko to show up. The route to the police station will take the uncle down this road and right into Keiichi's trap. Through the trees, he sees the uncle heading his way. He gets ready and jumps out at the perfect moment, swinging his bat right into the man and knocks him off of the motorbike. Realizing what's going on, the uncle runs away and thinks he escaped, but ends up tripping and falling down a hillside. And Keiichi catches the man and brutally beats him to death. Keiichi
He should not have did that, man. Come on, man. You let your emotion got to you, man.
You could have done so much better. His plan to kill the uncle, for example, while adequate, was sloppy and showcased his rage and personal
Thank you.
attachment to the victim, according to the U.S. Bureau of Justice. In 2010, over 60% of crimes were committed by someone who knew the victim, and the general trend in homicides, at least in the U.S., showcases this fact. And it's been shown that individuals will participate in criminal activities when the situations require minimal effort. This is why firearms are so popular, because it makes killing much easier and less personal. Keiichi choosing to use a baseball bat to stove this guy's head in will only make it that much more obvious that this guy was killed by someone who had a bone to pick with him. And it won't be long before they narrow down that list to Keiichi, especially since this is a small town. Knowing this guy's habits and schedule to have predicted where he would have been before killing him, however, was a big brain move. But again, trying to kill someone when they were driving past us is incredibly risky. What would have happened if Keiichi had missed and Satoko's uncle saw him and drove away? He would have been screwed. Keiichi should have found a better way to trip him up and take him off of his bike, such as laying a rope down.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, lay a rope like down when he come up, like, I was just saying, bro.
from one end of a tree to the other and using it to create a momentary line of tension, which will forcefully remove the uncle off of his bike. This would have allowed him to have some leeway on the off chance that something went wrong or if he changed his mind at the last minute. He could have simply ran away if he had done it right. Ideally, even just tossing him off of his bike going at a high speed could have been enough to kill the man, as falling onto your neck can have fatal consequences. The police would have assumed that the uncle would have crashed and fell to his death, but us using a baseball bat as the murder weapon means that there's something that can be used to trace it back to Keiichi. Keiichi was sloppy, making this crime job look even more sloppy than a Westerner backpacking in Asia. Keiichi hides the evidence, but forgets where he dug the hole. He rides back to the shed and grabs a shovel and digs another one to bury the uncle. He walks back home in the rain and runs into Blondie, who questions him about the equipment he's carrying in the rain. He attempts to lie about his activities, but the girl knows exactly what Keiichi has done. She offers to drive him home, telling the kid to leave his bicycle behind. In the car, the girlfriend asks him where he hid the body. Shocked, Keiichi pretends to not know what happened. The girl admits that she was joking, of course, but tells him to not mention that they met. Driving off, Keiichi wishes that she would die from the curse too, and if it doesn't take her out, he might have to do the curse's job for it. He enters the school the next day to his classmates cheering him on for his performance at the festival. Confused, he asks Rika, who tells him that they were together along with the village chief. Keiichi decides to forget about it and asks Satoko to play a game with him. She gives him a stern look and tells the new kid that she's not in the mood. Her uncle abused her the night before, and Keiichi is shocked to find out that he's still alive. He pays a visit to the doctor and asks him if the town has another kid that looks just like him. Confused, the doctor tells him that he was drinking the entire night. Suddenly, Keiichi breaks down and admits that he killed Satoko's uncle. The doctor is shocked, but he thanks the kid for relieving Satoko of her abuser. Keiichi mentions that he might still be alive, and the coach tells him that it's not possible. Okay, this is really weird, because while Keiichi planned the murder and thought of everything up until that point, Keiichi failed to consider the most important element of his entire plan, the human element. Keiichi, especially being a kid, didn't think of the actual consequences that killing someone with a bat, no less, would have done to his psyche and state of mind, which is actually crazy. Keiichi should have planned some sort of feng shui zen space for him to chill out a while after planning the killings, and should have avoided school and any place that would have put pressure on him mentally to reveal his secrets. He needed to mentally sober up first and be ready for the potential grilling that the police might bring his way. Him killing Satoko's uncle meant that it's a pretty bad idea to show up at school where Satoko is and his friends, as it would have likely stirred up his mind and reminded him even more of his murder, which means it was only a matter of time until he eventually squealed like a little fat pig. The doctor decides to close his clinic for the day and asks Keiichi here to leave, and Keiichi walks down the hallway but hears the doctor speaking to his colleague, overhearing everything, and the man believes Keiichi is suffering from a mental delusion. He freaks out and runs back to where he hid the body. The kid digs and shovels away when suddenly Keiichi, the investigator, surprises him from behind. He orders Keiichi to continue digging until he can't take it anymore. An hour later, he kicks the kid over and questions why was he digging a hole in the middle of the night. The investigator's colleagues continue digging in Keiichi's place and informs the others that there's nothing to be found. Absolutely nothing. That's when Keiichi realizes that the body isn't there and that his sense of reality,
I think that girl moved it,
is slipping away. Keiichi wakes up wondering if everything that happened last night was a dream. Extreme paranoia sets in, and he grabs the axe from the nearby shed to make sure. He heads over to Satoko's house and wanders around all over the place looking for her uncle. And he finally makes his way to the bathroom and finds little Satoko in the bath, counting from 1 to 10,000. She says that her uncle made her do this. This sends Keiichi into a rage, and he destroys the place. He takes the girl out of her house and arrives back at the school, but notices the police right outside, and he decides to hide behind the trees and bushes, letting Satoko down, and listens in to hear something horrifying. The authorities mention that the doctor and coach of the baseball team is dead, and they're currently searching for the investigator Oishi. That's when Satoko interrupts and tells him that she needs a change of clothes and tells Keiichi to carry her over to Rika's. On the way, Keiichi begins to freak out, realizing that every single person he wished to be dead has either disappeared or been brutally killed. He mentions that her uncle was one of of those people, and the girl gets off of his back, not believing him. But he insists that he killed her uncle in cold blood, and she decides to walk away from the crazy kid. Suddenly, Keiichi notices a pair of legs peeking out from behind the shrine. He walks over and realizes that it's Rika's dead body being eaten by crows. He uses the axe to drive away the crows, but the axe slips from his hand and falls into the pool of blood. He picks it up and looks to see that Satoko is
Now it look like he the one that did it. You see?
staring right at him. The little girl runs off while Keiichi chases after her, trying to convince her that he didn't kill Rika. She doesn't believe him, and Keiichi follows her to a bridge. Little Satoko
He's still carrying it.
demands that he throws away his axe before he gets any closer. He obliges and, like an idiot, tosses his axe over the bridge. He puts his hands behind his head, and Satoko forgives the kid and admits that he must have been possessed. It's happened to her before too, and it's all because of the curse. Recalling her memories, she freaks out and pushes Keiichi off of the bridge and to his death. Okay, no. I am so irritated right now. Throughout this whole thing, he has Groundhog Day this thing more times than we can count, and yet again, throughout all of his countless deaths, it hasn't taught him a single thing. There is no smart reason for Keiichi to do the dumb thing and have his back to a girl that is much smaller and weaker than him and just let her push him off of a bridge. And even though he hung on to dear life right before he fell, the truth was that Keiichi was dead from the start. From the looks of things, Keiichi fell from easily 200 feet, at least as best as we can tell from this scene from the bridge. But if we notice from the structure, which is what we know as a beam bridge, which is the most common bridge found worldwide, it may look like while Keiichi had an edge hanging from a relatively safe distance away from the girl, the fact is once he grabbed onto that beam, he was already screwed. Because despite from the looks of it, hanging from a single arm requires full body stabilization and training in a very technical manner in order to pull this off. In fact, I'm so surprised Keiichi, rocking side to side here, is still managing to keep his shoulder and wrist stabilized enough to not have his whole body begin to rotate and just twist him off of the bridge. And you can try this yourself. For someone who doesn't do this often, you'll notice that due to limb instability amongst other things, hanging from one arm will usually result in your whole body rotating until your shoulder eventually gets placed into a vulnerable position, because this move is way harder than it looks. And even if Keiichi managed to pull himself up and climb upside down using the monkey hung technique in order to make his way back to the base of the bridge, bridges like these, usually because of safety and legal reasons, usually require solid, non-climbable barriers that are distributed through certain points of the entire structure, and almost always makes these kind of bridges impossible to climb along the outer face and inner face of the entire thing. This means that even if Keiichi managed to pull himself up with strength that he did not have to begin with because he's a wuss, he most likely would not have made it back up either way and was doomed to die all along. And as we said, the drop from this bridge was well above 200 feet from the looks of things, which means Keiichi would have hit the water with such high velocity that the pressure would have either killed him or caused serious damage, as falling in water from anywhere higher than 100 meters or 300 feet would make hitting the water feel as if you're hitting concrete. And while you could in theory survive the drop if it was only 250 feet, his little tiny kid body probably isn't strong enough to handle the impact. Which means, long story short, that his own stupidity with how he acted around this girl was the reason that he was a dead man walking from the start. Elsewhere in a nearby city, the locals get word on the news that the town of Hinamizawa has become engulfed in volcanic gas, killing everybody except one person, Keiichi, the sole survivor of Hinamizawa. Whoa, that was nuts. Thank you, Private.
There, you heavy ladies and gentlemen. God, oh, yo, do like some ReZero type thing. I was confused. I ain't know what going on, but yeah, you already know. Legal, but I'm shooting a little like I'm